It's Thursday, December 4th, 2025. Welcome to Make It Make Sense. I'm Grant Herms. Today in the show, Pete Hegseth's terrible, horrible, no good, very bad week. On Tuesday, we talked all about whether or not Hegseth committed, ordered, or was party to the possible murder of two people in the Caribbean Sea that could also be war crimes, and the Pentagon and White House's shifting and conflicting stories about what actually happened. Well, today, the Admiral who was in charge of those operations spoke to leaders in Congress about the strikes, including showing them the video. Now, I'll talk about what we know and what's been reported about what we think we know about what he said. Then, as that was all happening, the Department of Defense released its report into Signalgate from last March, when Hegseth and several other high-ranking members of the Trump administration discussed classified airstrikes over the unsecured chat app Signal. Now, that report has some pretty damning findings in it for everyone involved, but particularly for Hegseth. I'll explain. But first, be sure to follow or subscribe to the show wherever you listen to it. Like and subscribe if you're on the YouTube. Share the show online. It's MIMS Newspod on every platform. I am at Grant Herms on Twitter and Blue Sky, and Grant_Herms on everything else. And be sure to subscribe to the Make It Make Sense Substack, where it really has been Pete Week here for us at MIMS, because this week the article is all about Hegseth's rise from soldier to Fox News host to Secretary of Defense, and it's all got one thing in common: his support for making it easier to commit war crimes and supporting the people accused, convicted, or who have admitted to committing those crimes. Now, that's only for paid subscribers, but I've got good news for you if you're not one of those yet, because for the next 2 weeks, Make It Make Sense is running its subscription drive, and it's the perfect time to jump right in right now. Paid subscriptions start at just $5 a month. That is the price of a cup of coffee to support independent journalism that actually explains the world. Annual subscriptions are 20% off. And if you subscribe as a founding member, for that price, it is locked in for good. As a paid subscriber, you get weekly access to the original reporting, to the Make It Make Sense community chat, and the brand new newsletter, Things You Forgot from Civics class, which is a fast, clear breakdown of the civics stuff that we all should have learned in school but didn't or probably forgot about by now. So if you've been thinking about subscribing, this is the month to do it. Hit the link in the bio, support the work, and let's keep making it make sense. All right, let's get on with the show. Give the gift of luxury this holiday season with Cozy Earth. Picture it: a quiet holiday morning, everyone together, wrapped in warmth, laughter, and that perfect kind of cozy that you just wish you could bottle all the time. Well, a silent night starts with the right sheets, and Cozy Earth's bamboo sheets are the ultimate gift. It's everyday luxury elevated, the kind of comfort that turns every night into a serene escape no matter how much clatter arises. Plus, every sheet has a 100-day sleep trial and a 10-year warranty. You really cannot go wrong. And don't forget about the pajamas for those holiday mornings. The women's stretch knit and the men's bamboo sets are made for those slow, snuggly holiday moments at home. Visit CozyEarth.com and use my exclusive 40% off code MIMS25, that's MIMS25, to get 40% off your entire order this holiday season. And if you get a post-purchase survey, make sure you heard about Cozy Earth from Make It Make Sense. We get a cut of that money, so you're helping us, and you get to stay warm this holiday season. Wrap the ones you love in luxury with Cozy Earth. All right, let's get back to the show. Today, there has been a lot of fallout from two scandals that have rocked the Department of Defense. The first one is the one that we talked about on Tuesday: whether or not Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, ordered the U.S. military to commit war crimes in the Caribbean by sending a second strike down on two people who had survived an initial strike on their alleged drug boat. Now, I'm not going to rehash the entire thing. You can go back and listen to Tuesday's episode for the full details of the strike and what the U.S. has been doing to people that we only think might be carrying drugs, potentially towards the U.S., in a will they, won't they, Harry Met Sally kind of fun thing with an armed conflict with Venezuela. What I will rehash here is that the U.S. Law of War Manual gives the specific example of firing on the shipwrecked as a war crime, and the Geneva Convention also says it's a war crime, so it would at the very least be tantamount to murder according to both U.S. and international law, and at worst, war crimes. It's also worth saying that Pete Hegseth is no fan of either the rules of engagement or the Geneva Convention for preventing atrocities in war, but you can read about that this week on the Substack. Now, since the reporting that Hegseth gave the order to, quote, kill them all came out, Hegseth has been blaming one particular person for this second strike, Admiral Frank Mitch Bradley. Now, before I go on, I got to make a quick correction from Tuesday's episode. I said that Bradley had put in his resignation earlier this year as the head of the U.S. South Command, or Southcom. That wasn't right. I mixed up Bradley and another admiral. That admiral, Alvin Halsey, is the head of Southcom, and he announced he'd be resigning in October, effective this month. More on him in a minute. Bradley, on the other hand, is the admiral in charge of Special Operations Command, or SPECCOM. I am sorry for the error. I don't know how I mixed this up, but I'll make sure that it doesn't happen again. Moving on. Bradley was on Capitol Hill today, meeting with the heads of the House Armed Services Committee, both Republican and Democrat, and the heads of the Senate Intelligence Committee, again, both Republicans and Democrats. He was meeting them in a closed-door, classified meeting with the Joint Chiefs of Staff, so the heads of each military branch, to answer questions about this strike and likely other strikes that have been happening in the Caribbean, because since we're technically not at war, the people in those boats haven't been given due process, and the administration can't even tell us if they're all even carrying drugs, so people like Bradley have some splaining to do. According to reporting from the Wall Street Journal, Bradley was expected to tell congressional leaders that he and his legal advisor concluded the two survivors were attempting to continue their drug run, making them and the already damaged vessel legitimate targets for another attack. Now, that actually doesn't line up with what Hegseth said on Tuesday at a cabinet meeting, where he said the second strike was ordered because of all the smoke, a literal fog of war, so they couldn't see what was happening, which, again, doesn't match what Bradley is reportedly saying here, but also that Hegseth said he actually left the room because he's a busy boss boy and had to leave during an active military operation. Now, that response from Hegseth has led some senators to question why he left at all, like North Carolina Republican Tom Tillis.
I'll take at face value right now what Secretary Hegseth said. He said he wasn't there. He said he was busy doing other things. I would assume a part of the record was what was the other thing that he was doing that was more important than a battle damage assessment over the first strike in the Caribbean.
Tillis has a point, and that is something that Hegseth hasn't answered yet, though not answering questions is going to become a theme for Hegseth in this episode. Anyway, as members left this meeting with Bradley, many of them looked stunned. And these are people, many of them former military themselves, but also people who get military briefings like this all the time. Among them was Jim Himes, a Democrat from Connecticut, who told reporters, "What I saw in that room was one of the most troubling things I've seen in my time in public service," adding, "You have two individuals in clear distress, without any means of locomotion, with a destroyed vessel, who are killed by the United States." And that sounds really damning. On the other hand, Republican Senator Tom Cotton told reporters that Bradley was very clear that he was given no such order to give no quarter or to kill them all. He was given an order that, of course, was written down in great detail, is what Cotton said. Now, the key thing here is that Cotton is talking about a written order. The reporting about the kill them all order is that it was a verbal one made by Hegseth, and then later on, the Pentagon said it could even have come from Trump. But the problem with verbal orders is they're not always recorded, which if you're giving a potentially legally dubious order, well, not having it in writing is probably a good thing for you. There were also worries among members of Congress right now over whether what's being shown and what members are being told in these meetings is even the truth. Former House Intelligence Committee Chair and Republican Mike Turner talked about it this morning on MSNBC.
So there's very much concerns where we all go back to the issue of the intelligence and what intelligence is being used. What do we really know about these individuals? What do we know about this cargo? What do we know about the communications that here? And quite frankly, many members have very much concerns as to whether or not the accuracy of what information is being used is to the level for us to even know what's happening in this area. And members are very concerned.
So I know that was a bunch of word salad there, but what he was saying is there are members of Congress right now who are worried that the current Department of Defense and Admiral Bradley might be lying to Congress to continue carrying out unlawful attacks against people who have not been proven to be guilty while the U.S. is not officially at war or even in a declared conflict. But the fact alone that these members think there's a possibility the DoD would lie to them is troubling and a scandal in and of itself. And those worries only got worse after some more new reporting, again from the Wall Street Journal this week, saying that the admiral for the U.S. Southern Command, who oversees these operations in the Caribbean, had been forced out by Hegseth, or is being forced out by Hegseth. Now, it is very worth pointing out here that Halsey is a black man, and so much of Hegseth's crusade at the Department of Defense has been against leadership of color, which Hegseth has decried as only happening because the military has been captured by the woke mob as a kind of social engineering. So you can see how a black guy who earned his stars after being a helicopter pilot in combat, the commander of the first of its kind warship, and a commander of an entire aircraft carrier group might dislike a Fox News host who left his military service as a major in the reserves. Anyway, a big thing that Halsey and Hegseth fought over was the operation in the Caribbean. The Wall Street Journal writing, Halsey had initial concerns about the legality of lethal strikes on alleged drug boats in the Caribbean. And in one of their early arguments over Trump wanting to invade Panama to take the Panama Canal, remember that? That wasn't even a full year ago. Hegseth apparently, in this argument, blew up at Halsey on a video call saying you're either on the team or you're not. When you get an order, you move out fast, you don't ask questions. Now, I do need to say that we have civilian control of the military, the president and the secretary of defense, so that the top brass in the military are, in a roundabout kind of way, accountable to the people and not just their own chain of command. It's supposed to prevent military coups at its most basic idea. And honestly, it's probably something for the things you forgot from civics class files. But it's expected that there is a healthy back and forth between civilian leadership and military leaders as high up as Halsey when it comes to carrying out these missions. It's why military leaders generally serve 4-year terms that span across administrations, so there can be some kind of continuity in national security. So you can see how Hegseth telling a 4-star admiral to sit down and shut up wouldn't be received well or taken lightly by members of the military, let alone the dude in charge of all operations happening in a quarter of the planet. Now, after Hegseth asked Halsey to resign, or told him to, Hegseth promptly announced that he was resigning, which was another slight to Halsey, because normally you let the person resigning say they're resigning first. Halsey did put out a resignation letter of his own that he would be stepping down on December 12th, so 8 days from now. So after he steps down, we might get more insight from him. We also might get unclassified versions of what Bradley told these congressional leaders who seem eager to get to the bottom of this. After all, both the House and Senate have launched bipartisan investigations into this strike, and the president even said he'd release the video of the strike. Here it is.
I don't know what they have, but whatever they have, we'd certainly release, no problem.
We'll see if that happens. We'll see if he just wants to move on, but it doesn't look like it's the end of this thing for now. But what that does get us to is the other major part of Pete Hegseth's very bad week. And that's a brand new report from the Department of Defense's Office of Inspector General that was looking into Signalgate. If you don't remember what Signalgate is, it happened a long, long time ago in March of this year. Pete Hegseth put together a group chat of high-ranking U.S. officials, including the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, the then National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, and the Vice President. Also, accidentally added to the chat was the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, which is how we found out about this story in the first place, and we still don't really know how he was added to that chat. But in that chat, Hegseth laid out strike plans that were clearly labeled classified and highly sensitive information. Signal, while commercially encrypted, is not considered secure and is not approved for sending sensitive U.S. information. What this report ended up finding was, quote, the secretary sent sensitive, non-public information that he determined did not require classification over the Signal chat on his personal cell phone. However, because the secretary indicated that he used the Signal application on his personal cell phone to send non-public DoD information, we concluded that the secretary's actions did not comply with DoD instruction. And it's worth saying here that the report also says the Secretary of Defense is the person in charge of what is and isn't classified when it comes to operations like these, and like the report says, Hegseth determined that what he was sending wasn't classified. Except, the report said basically nothing was kept classified, saying the message about the strike time, the military vehicle used, and even the kinds of missiles, so the most sensitive information about this operation, specifically substantially restated details from the commander's first classified email, which was, as they said in a different part of this report, was clearly marked at the tops and bottoms of all the pages that Hegseth was reading off of as being classified. And because of that, the investigation found that Hegseth's use of Signal risked potential compromise of sensitive DoD information, which could cause harm to DoD personnel and mission objectives, or in other words, could have put U.S. military lives at risk. On top of it, all of that, we found that Hegseth used this signal chat not while he was en route in a Humvee to a meeting or a briefing on the Hill, but he was already in a secure room called a SCIF. It's an acronym. Don't worry about it or Google it if you want to, but they're used to set up militarily secured meetings and lines of communication to discuss this exact kind of thing. Hegseth was also in there with 2 staffers, including a military assistant, who could have said not to use Signal and instead set up a secure line. Now, that piece in particular does leave some questions about why Hegseth and other U.S. leaders would use Signal at all, from their personal phones, no less. Because given the fact an official line could have been set up, it does start to paint the picture that the people on this chat were hoping to avoid a record of it, and a record of what they were saying and doing, because Signal allows you to auto-delete messages after a certain time period. And as the report points out, they only got partial copies of this chat because of that, which is also against the law. It's actually something I talked about with a former National Archives lawyer back in March. And if you're interested in more of that, it's really worth checking out that conversation. It was one of the better ones this year. Now, remember earlier when I said Hegseth not answering questions was going to be a theme? Well, when he was asked to be interviewed for this investigation, he refused and instead just sent a letter where he attacked the investigators and made justifications for what he had done. This investigation wasn't about referring anyone for criminal charges or civil penalties. It was to make sure the DoD and how people communicate in it and about it are working within the rules of the department, and to find out if there were any gaps in those rules that need to be addressed so service members aren't unnecessarily put in harm's way. Hegseth has claimed to be the most pro-warrior Secretary of Defense ever, and has also claimed that his DoD is the most transparent ever. Not sitting down for an interview with the people tasked with making sure your department runs smoothly isn't really doing either. Now, online, Hegseth said the report was a full exoneration of him, which obviously it's far from that, but he's taking a page of the president's playbook here and is just claiming victory in that he's innocent, so he hopes people will move on. Except, given the reactions from Congress to this and the ongoing investigations into his actions in the Caribbean, it really doesn't seem like this terrible, horrible, no good, very bad week for Pete Hegseth is going to be over by Friday. All right. That's it for today's episode. Please rate and review the show whatever podcast app you listen to it on. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications if you're a watcher on YouTube. Sign up right now for the Make It Make Sense Substack while I've got the subscriber drive going on. You can get access to discounted annual discounts or founder members who sign up. It's a little bit more expensive, but that price is locked in for good. You can find all that at links in the show notes. And of course, share the show on social media. It's MIMS News Pod, MIMS News Pod, all one word on every platform. I am at Grant Herms on Twitter and Blue Sky, and Grant_Herms on Instagram, TikTok, and pretty much everything else. Thank you so much for listening today. I'm Grant Herms, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.